Welcome to Thoughts on Things with DrBossKey. That's me. And the question we have today is, if you were in a bad mood, do you prefer to be left alone or have someone cheer you up? And then we're going to put that out to chat. And I think here, this is the thing, right? Everyone's different. And that's really the rub. So a lot of times when people have things like depression, and depression doesn't necessarily mean you're just sad. It's a whole different level. There's other things for that. But when someone has something difficult like depression they're dealing with, people that are close to them often don't know how to deal with that. And as a result, sometimes they get callous and they offer advice. They don't know. Sometimes they put distance between themselves. So I think this is the heart of it, right? I use that extreme example because the reality is everyone's different. And the advice I can give, and the I think what's important to me, right, is when you find something that gives you joy, and this is important because the joy you want to experience, or the happiness, or the smiles, or the uplifted mood, ideally it's something that isn't fully reliant on an external source or a person in your life. Because if your joy is only attached to being with a friend or family, you can't always guarantee that's going to be there. So you have to also dig deep and develop a comfortable relationship with yourself and to acknowledge the things that also make you happy. Sometimes that can be as simple as going for a walk. For me, I love alone time and diving into a game for several hours at a time. Which can also be its own issue. Like if you go too deep trying to find this type of comfort and happiness, it can also alienate you and cut you off and create very addictive habits. There are always balancing things in life, right? So I think for me, when I'm in a bad mood, there's a couple things that happen. One is I acknowledge that I find the things that ground me, that make me happy, that allow me to have time to think. That because I realize that it's very easy just to be always on the go, always working, throwing yourself deeply into something and staying away from thinking about the things that are bringing you down. And that in itself means that for me, I've identified that I need to find hobbies and activities that give my mind time to allow the thinking on these tender subjects. And there's also wonderful things about changing your state. Sometimes, going for a walk and taking in grand vistas, things that have lots of open space, standing in front of the ocean, anything that's bigger than you often makes you feel more connected to everything because you can appreciate the space. So my advice is, and my thoughts are, find the things that make you happy in your own relationship with yourself first. Be fortunate and grateful for the other relationships in your life that also lift you up and elevate your mood. And I think that when you have people around you that care and love you in any situation, doesn't be extreme, I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, hey, I just want you to know I'm in a bad mood right now. Nothing to do with you. Yeah, this is just my thing. I'm working through it. And sometimes if you've identified that you need space, people will appreciate knowing that you need that. Even if you don't know what you need. And you don't necessarily need to follow up the statements by letting the person know you need something from them. Sometimes that's okay too, depending on the relationship. But it's about communication, right? And knowing your state, knowing where you're at, and sometimes just being okay with understanding that we all work through stuff, and we all have to take time. You can't make anything change just in an instant. But there's a whole other set of conversations and things that I think are important. But those are those are my bits of advice, the way I deal with things as well. So Tony says, I say I want to be alone, but secretly want someone to cheer me up. I appreciate that. And your friends will intuit some of those things, Mood's such a tough thing. Germanson says, I'd rather be alone when I'm in a bad mood, but if there's someone to cheer me up, like my family around, then I'll be fine with it. I like that. I appreciate that. I also, by the way, in general, I think for me, when I'm in a bad mood, I get irritable. I get irritated sometimes. It happens, right? And if I'm in a social situation, I withdraw just a little bit. I don't make it a big deal, and for my friends, just to make sure they know, I'm like, hey, I'm just working out some irritation. I'll be done with it, not long. It's nothing to do with you. If it had something to do with it, I'd tell you if I thought it was important. But it's me right now, you know. And most of my friends go, hey, it's probably because you haven't eaten in a few hours. Like, maybe you should, like, you know, a little food. Like, all right, you know, like there's things like that. Your people know you better than you expect them to in a lot of ways. Good answer. Rolly Boy says, when I'm in a bad mood, I always go out of the house and try to watch people passing by or tease my pets. See? Things to change your state, get your mind off it. People watching is a fantastic activity. Things that allow you to imagine, to be outside of yourself, then can get you to think about things that are not necessarily related to why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And sometimes can allow you just to have that time to process. Changing your state, changing your way you think, changes your mood. And then you can come back and sometimes deal. Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes it's more complex. You never know. Everyone is different. And that's okay. Sly says, I want to be able to be cheered up. Hanging out or talking about it would be best. Yeah, see, I can appreciate that. Being able to work through things. Now, it's also, it reminds me, right? It's important not to fall into the trap of commiserating. Like when you get into a group of complainers and you complain all the time about things and you're unable to change that, the group finds commiseration in that. And sometimes it's okay to complain about things. But so the quote that I enjoy is, insight without action is meaningless. Insight without action is meaningless. You know, and I think about that. I've been in places where I've been a pessimist. I've been the glass is half empty kind of fellow when I was in my 20s. And it took me a conscious effort to change my thinking there. Not to like, yeah, everything's Disneyland. But I realized that, you know, the way you feel and the way you think, part of it is patterned behavior. And the more you engage in the patterns, the more you lock those patterns in. And they become comfort places, because when you're commiserating and complaining and being negative, you know, it feels like you have agency and you're allowing yourself to be powerless, but at least say something and do something. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with negative emotions or creating negative emotions through your behaviors, you know, you don't even realize that you're forming relationships within yourself and sometimes potentially other people, and participating in these types of habits that actually bring you down. It's an interesting thing. It took me a long time to, you know, I didn't, when I started my journey to change my mental perceptions, you know, because the way I behave and act and express myself, of course, relates and has an effect on all the people around me to different degrees. And I found that was more and more important. You know, that's the other saying, perception is reality, right? Very powerful. Jelly Dude says, as of late, I prefer to be alone. It's helped me to learn self-strength, and going to someone else in my experience just isn't the best. Caught up in life, I can appreciate that perspective. Well, thank you. Elrock says, most of the time I'd rather be alone. I usually like to gather my thoughts, weigh my priorities, and try to sort out things in order. If I can't get that out of the hole, that's the time I need someone to cheer me up so my brain can have a brief time out. Then I can go back to the reason why I'm having a gloomy day and try to look at it from a different perspective. And it's quite powerful, Elrock. Thank you for that share. Like, this is the thing, right? They don't teach this stuff in school. Your parents don't always tell you about these things. You know, this is not a comfortable thing, why we feel, how we feel, and, you know, how to even deal with our feelings, right? Like, we're very, like when you're a kid, you know, you have extremes and you have a hard time learning from those, you know, and it takes time. So, you know, but the intelligent conversation on how to talk about these things, you know, let alone the layering of things that happen, you know, based on society, tribe, community, communication, relationships. I mean, those are all other aspects to this, right? So it's very cool and powerful to see that, you know, people are able to share some of their wisdom. So thank you for that. Tony says, it really depends on the cause of my mood too. If I'm pissed about something, I need my space. But if I'm just feeling blue, I want company. That's a good self-reflection as well. Thank you, Tony. Skyler says, when I'm down, there's times I need to be alone, and there's times I like to be cheered up. Yeah, not everything is black and white. Cat Bam says, eat a Snickers. You aren't you when you're hangry, right? That's as it goes. Hey, Cat Bam. Psycho Bunny, we're going to get to that right in just a second. We're almost done. Warrior says, it really depends, but I tend to keep myself majority of time. So mostly, wait. He says, it really depends, but I tend to keep to myself the majority of the time. So mostly I would prefer to be alone, but the right people make it feel much better. Ah, see? Thank you for that, Warrior. Look at you stepping up and having a great share.